In speaker reviews they often talk about soundstage and image. But what are those and how can you experience them in your own setup? Speakers are a bit like real estate. Besides design and build quality, their location plays an equal part in determining their real value. Although, with speaker location, I'm not talking about different parts of the city, but rather about the room and the way they are set up in that particular room. A high-end speaker, incorrectly positioned in a poorly optimized room, will not sound great, while at the same time a budget speaker, correctly set up in an optimized room, can sound fantastic. Today I will show you how I set up my speakers to get the best possible result. But first, let me explain what we're actually aiming for. Soundstage has to do with depth, width and height, meaning music is perceived as coming from behind, besides and above the speakers. Image concerns the ability to pinpoint the actual location where the singers and musicians were standing during the recording. The most common reason why a lot of systems do not seem to deliver good imaging and sound staging is because the speakers are set too close to the back and side walls. Most speaker manuals recommend a minimum distance of about 30 centimeters from any wall. And even though this is still better than placing them directly against the wall, it's usually not enough to bring out the best your speakers have to offer. To experience that, you'll have to move your speakers a lot further from the wall, probably more than you have ever imagined. Unfortunately, there are no standard distances for every speaker or room. This will take some experimenting. However, a good starting point that works in most rectangular rooms is to place the speakers on 1/5 of the width and length of the room. This room, for example, is 375 centimeters wide, therefore I initially placed the speakers about 75 centimeters away from the sidewall. The total length of this room is 575 centimeters. So I start by placing the speakers at 115 centimeters from the front wall. Besides the distances from the walls, the distance from the front of the loudspeaker to the listening position should also be taken in consideration. In most cases, this will be approximately 1.2 times as much as the distance between the front speakers and preferably 1/3 to 1/5 room length away from the back wall. By the way, the correct way to measure distances from the speakers to the side walls and back walls is to use the front side of the speaker as a reference point, not the sides or the back. After the initial setup, I put on a track with a consistent bass line, like for example Royals by Lord, and slightly move the speakers back and forward until the bass sounds right. It's important to do this because if you don't get the bass right, nothing will sound right. Next, I play a track with strong vocals and gradually decrease the distance between the two speakers, until I get the fullest mid-bass without sacrificing the stereo image, which happens when both your ears start to hear each speaker equally. You might get tempted to place the speakers too far apart, as that causes the soundstage to appear bigger, but bear in mind that this will sacrifice the mid-bass and increase early reflections from the side walls. The last fine-tuning step is towing in. Although, if you should actually do this depends on which particular speaker you are using. Nevertheless, I found that with most speakers, a slight toe-in usually reinforces the center image. Now, when everything is properly set up and you play a good recording, you will still see the speakers with your eyes. But your ears will try very hard to convince you that there is no sound coming out of them at all. Instead, the vocalist and instruments will each claim their own position within the room. A good track to test your setup is Little Room by Norah Jones. If you got things right, her voice should be dead center, slightly behind and above the speakers. With more spacious tracks, like for example On the Run by Pink Floyd, things get even weirder and the soundstage stretches out over the left and right side of the speakers, almost like with a surround setup. And that's all guys, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing. See you!